You didn't ask for your world to collapse. It just did. One moment you were holding life together, by threads, maybe, but it was yours. Then, without warning, the threads snapped. You didn't see it coming, not like that. Loss came in waves. Silence replaced voices. Laughter turned into echoes. And in the rubble of it all, a single question burned through your chest. Where was God? People gave you their answers. Some told you God has a plan, like it was supposed to ease the pain. Others said, everything happens for a reason, but the reason never came. And there were those who simply stayed silent, afraid, maybe, because they didn't know either. But deep down, beyond religion, beyond rituals and holy books, beyond the names we give to the divine, you were just a human, broken open, whispering toward the sky. If you're real, where were you when I needed you the most? And maybe no thunder replied. Maybe the heavens stayed quiet. Maybe no miracle came, and the ones you loved didn't rise again. Maybe all you had left were the tears that no one saw. But in that silence, something else happened. You kept breathing. You stood, even if it was shaky. You looked at the broken pieces, not to fix them, but to say, this happened. And I'm still here. That doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean it was supposed to happen. It doesn't erase the weight. But maybe, just maybe, God was never the lightning, never the loud voice from the sky, never the magic trick to undo the pain. Maybe God was the breath that stayed with you when you collapsed. The whisper that said, you're not alone, even when the room was empty. The strength that wasn't yours, but showed up anyway. Maybe God is not the one who prevents the fall, but the one who falls with you, weeps with you, walks with you through the night no one else understands. And maybe God doesn't always answer, but is always near. Still. Silent. Present. And maybe, that's enough to take one more step. There's something raw and sacred about that moment when you stop pretending you're okay. When your faith, if you had it, feels like a house that's been burned to the ground, and all that remains is ash and memory. It's there, in that quiet devastation, where the real search begins. Not for answers that fit in neat religious boxes, but for something true. For something real. You see, pain has a strange way of stripping us of the lies we told ourselves to sleep at night. It tears down the polished images, the borrowed beliefs, the phrases we repeated without fully knowing what they meant. What's left is something unsettling, but also honest. And in that honesty, you start to see things differently. Maybe you begin to notice the person who sat beside you and didn't say a word, but somehow made the silence bearable. Maybe you remember how you managed to get out of bed the next day, even though your soul weighed 1,000 pounds. Maybe you start to understand that survival, in itself, is a sacred act. And maybe the question shifts, from where was God? To where did I find strength I didn't know I had? Because what if God was never far? What if God was hidden in the smallest things, the breath you thought would break you, but didn't, the tears that felt like weakness, but were actually healing, the stranger's smile, the late-night song, the sky cracking open at dawn? Not the God of explanations, but the God who stays. The one who doesn't fix it all, but holds you while it breaks. The one who lets you scream, rage, cry, and never turns away. You're not wrong for asking where God was. That's a holy question. And maybe the only answer worthy of it is this. Right here. In the wreckage. With you. And maybe, just maybe, you're not alone. Not now. Not ever. You might not feel it. In fact, you probably don't. Because grief is loud. Suffering is disorienting. And silence, especially divine silence, can feel like abandonment. But what if silence is sometimes the language of presence, not absence? What if, instead of words, you're being given breath? What if, instead of a sign, you're being given endurance? Not because your pain is ignored, but because your soul is being held in ways you don't yet recognize. It doesn't make the loss less real. It doesn't erase the questions. But somewhere deep in your spirit, a truth begins to stir. That you are seen. That you are carried. That your story didn't end the day everything fell apart. You're still here. And that, by itself, is a quiet miracle. Because some don't make it. Some get lost in the grief. But not you. Not yet. You're listening. Even if with trembling hands and a fractured heart, you're still reaching toward light. That reaching is sacred. That reaching is what makes you whole. So maybe this video found you on purpose. Maybe these words aren't an accident. And maybe you needed to hear, not the voice of a preacher, but a whisper in the dark. You are not forgotten. Even when the world broke apart. Even when heaven went quiet. Even when everything seemed empty. Something, someone, was still with you. Maybe the silence wasn't rejection, but invitation. An invitation to discover something no sermon ever taught you, no book ever explained. That faith is sometimes born in the ashes, not in the answers. That the divine doesn't always roar, it often whispers through your own survival. You see, we imagine that if God were real, he would act loud, fast, and obvious. But what if divinity is most present when everything else is gone? When the structures collapse, the people leave, the dreams die. And you're left with nothing but breath and a strange kind of stillness. That stillness is not the end. It's the beginning of a different kind of knowing. Not the kind you read about. The kind you become. A wisdom that grows inside broken places and refuses to be explained away. And maybe that's why you haven't given up. Because even in pain, a question keeps flickering. What if this ache is not empty? What if this crack is the doorway? You're not broken beyond repair. You are becoming. Slowly. Quietly. In a way no one sees, but heaven does. And if you feel too tired to believe in anything right now, I understand. This isn't about forcing faith. This is about honoring the fact that you're still breathing. Let that be enough for today. Let that be sacred. There's something holy in simply enduring. The world tells you that progress is movement, that healing is loud, that victory looks like smiles and success. But you and I know, it's not always like that. Sometimes, just getting out of bed is sacred work. Sometimes, crying in the dark is the only honest prayer left. And if you've ever whispered, "God, where are you?" then you've spoken one of the most ancient questions of the human soul. It's a question that echoed from prophets and poets. It's not a doubt, it's a longing. Not all who cry out have lost faith. Some are just trying to find their way through the silence. And that silence, it doesn't mean you've been abandoned. You're walking through a sacred wilderness. One not filled with quick answers, but with slow revelations. And maybe, just maybe, this part of your story, the one filled with confusion and pain, will be the chapter that teaches others how to survive. You are not cursed. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. Let that sink in. Not with fear, but with a quiet kind of reverence. Every tear you've cried in secret carries the weight of something divine. They don't fall into emptiness. They fall into eternity. Into the unseen hands of the one who collects sorrow like treasure. Pain is not proof that God is gone. It's often the doorway through which something deeper enters. Something unshakable. Something eternal. You've been told to look for miracles in loud places, in lightning, in parting seas. But what if the real miracle is that you're still here? Still breathing. Still searching. Still daring to hope, even if just a flicker. The breaking of your world was never the end of your story. It might be the very moment your soul began to wake up. So if everything is falling apart, if the pieces of your life no longer make sense, you're not outside of grace. You're in the center of it. Sometimes, what looks like falling apart is really falling into place. Not your old plan, but something far more ancient, more honest, more you. And if you're still asking, where was God when everything fell apart? Maybe the real question is, where are you now? Because something in you survived. Something in you endured. And that something, that quiet strength, is not accidental. What if God was there, in the silence, in the ache? Not fixing what you thought needed fixing, but holding what you didn't even know was breaking. Maybe he didn't stop the storm, because he was becoming the anchor. Maybe he didn't take away the pain, because he was weaving it into purpose. Not as punishment, not as distance, but as invitation. An invitation to rediscover who you are. When everything you leaned on is gone. To hear the whisper behind the noise. To find the sacred in the shattered. To meet the I am not in the sky, but in the ashes, in the breath, in the now. So no, this is not the end. It's a beginning disguised as collapse. And you, beloved listener, you are not alone in the ruins. You are seen. You are held. And you are being remade by a love that does not flinch at brokenness. If this spoke to your heart, write in the comments, I'm still here. Let that be your echo into the universe. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and tap the bell, so you never miss the light that might just meet you in your darkest hour. Thank you for being here. You're not just watching a video. You're remembering who you are. Dove until the next light.